Hello, we're getting some work done today on my project. I've actually been getting quite a bit of work done over the last few days, but it's been nice to make these videos. Like I said, I don't have an academic advisor, so these are like my advisor meetings. You get me? Like I put some work in, and now like here we're gonna have an advisor meeting, and I'm gonna show you guys like what I've kind of evolved this as over the last few days. It's been interesting because I feel like I'm getting through, and in some ways I'm having more faith as I go along because I've been able to sort of shift my project the way it needs to be shifted. But it's been a little bit scary. But I have to, again, this whole thing has been an exercise in like just have faith in myself, just keep going. I've never gone so hard at something in my entire life. Like I've never been this consistent, and I think it's nice to be so far along because I'm like, okay, this is one thing that I'm like, I have to see what happens if I go all the way through with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like the curiosity is like killing me. Like, is this gonna go right? Like, how is this gonna work? I've been like extremely curious and just like, how is this gonna go? So it's like I have to keep going. And because of that, I'm getting curiouser and just curiouser as I go along. Okay, really quick, if you're around my age, I'm about to give you some advice. It's like, it's simultaneously insulting, but also like, listen to me and like, I'm gonna be real with you. If you're like a teenager or maybe a bit younger than me, you're like 19, 20, and you're looking at yourself and you're like, you have an idea of the kind of person that you are, and you're like, oh, I don't know, like you see other people doing things, and you're like, oh, I wish I was that kind of person. I'm gonna give you real advice. You are not a person yet, okay? You are not a person yet. You have zero sense of who you are at all, like at all. I feel like I thought like, oh, I'm not that kind of person because I would see people doing projects and things. I was like, wow, how do people my age have such determination? Or I had like certain attributes of myself that I really wanted. And I thought that it just wasn't me. But then I realized that I was just too young to know. I was truly just too young to know. It's like, how was I? You develop so much, and I feel like the things that are important about yourself just start to appear. And it's like I was that kind of person the whole time. It wasn't that I wasn't that kind of person. Honestly, at any age, you can have that mentality. You can. I think that we are all capable of such deep change as well. Like you don't have to be stuck to one personality. But I'm just telling you that, like, if you're like younger, you are not a person yet. Okay, do not look at yourself and be like, oh, I'm not that kind of person. You are not a person. You can become a person when you're like 22. Okay, when you're 22, then you can start to say, oh, I'm not that kind of person. Even honestly, let's go older. Like, let's go like 26 or something. If by 26 you're having a hard time with something, maybe then you can start saying, I'm not that kind of person. But if you're like that age too, like you should know that's a limiting belief, okay? You can always change the kind of person that you are, but it's like you are a person at that point. Right now I'm not like I'm starting to become a person. I was like looking back, I was like an amoeba. Like I feel like when I was like 19, 20, 16, I'm an amoeba, okay? I know nothing about myself. Looking back at who I was when I was like 16, if I were to tell my 16-year-old self I was doing any of this, she'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you know, like an NPC. I feel like if you don't know what an NPC is, it's like that little character in a video game that just says things and they don't really have a personality yet. I feel like 16-year-old me was an NPC. You get me? Like I look back and I'm like, I don't have like obviously I was full of personality. I had so many interests and stuff. But I look back and I was like, whoa, I don't even know who that person is. That is a literal NPC compared to me and who I am and like the level of like awareness and like the things that I do. That is NPC me. And like I think like this is like human being, like main character me. You know what I mean? So if you're like around my age and like my sister and I used to have this conversation actually because I'm 3 years older than my sister. And she would say the same thing to me. My sister is like actually one of those kinds of people nowadays who will do all sorts of different creative projects and stuff. She's always taking pictures. She's like amazing, right? But when we used to drive around in our hometown, and she would tell me like she told me once that she doesn't know how people like around her age when she was only like 17, she's like some people are so good at really carrying their projects out, and I feel like I'm not that kind of person and I don't even know what I want to do. That's because you're 17. Okay, that is not because you're not the kind of person to do it. That's because you're 17 and you don't know anything about yourself or the world. You don't even. It's amazing that some people at that age are really passionate about certain things. They're young people who do amazing things and who already have such a good sense of themselves. That is not the average person. So if you're like that age and you're looking at other people and you're being like, oh no, like how are they that kind of person, or I'm not that kind of person. You are not a person, okay? Those kids, I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what they got, what was in the water when their parents were, I don't know what was going on. That is not normal. That's really cool. But you can still be that. Like it doesn't matter. I really thought that it was over for me because I didn't like save the world at 19 or something. It's like, no, I wasn't even a human being yet, to be honest with you. So just wait, like you'll see. You will see the amount of character growth that happens from the time you're like, I feel like I started being like an inkling of a human being at like 17, but like a touch. Like, you know what I mean? So from 17 to like 23, I feel like I've actually become like a real human, you know? So just so you know, but this is my method section so far. Let me show you, like, it has grown quite a bit with things. Quite a bit, quite a bit. I've dropped some things, I've added some things. This isn't even really the full thing. This is just things I've like sort of migrated in. Basically, right now, here's like some of the differences that have really like changed so far. Okay. I went into this thinking that I was going to model it based off of humans, based off of the self as well, because I'm looking at disorders that are really deeply connected to selfhood. So, dissociative identity disorder, dissociative disorders, just in general, where things don't adhere well to your sense of self, right? So, I still want to look at that. I don't know. Sometimes things kind of have drifted out of my project and they've come back in surprising ways. Like, I feel like maybe by the end, all of that will be incorporated. But right now, I think I've kind of dropped a little bit of that. And I still think that what I'm doing is really central to that mechanism, but it's a bit hard because what I've had to do is that there's not enough numbers there's actually like not really any numbers on humans on this, but there's a lot of numbers, a lot of studies on rats. So I basically had to shift it so that everything is going to be based off of those rat models. So, for example, the memories that I'm going to make are going to be rat memories. So I don't even know if I've copied pasted that in here yet. It's probably on my ChatGPT. We might jump into my ChatGPT really quick. Actually, no, I'll just tell you for now, and then we'll go into it in a second. But basically, so the rat studies, they'll have the rats going through stressful situations. So basically, for example, I thought, my cat loves to get pet. I think rats don't really understand why people are petting them. So for some reason, that's stressful for them. So getting like handled, like sort of touched is stressful, but apparently not as stressful depending on the amount. This is what I've seen from the studies. Swimming, one of the most stressful things that the rat could do was swimming for 15 minutes uninterrupted because I guess they feel like they're drowning. Like they didn't actually die, but they were just nervous, like really stressed out. So that was bringing up really high amounts of arousal. So this range here of acetylcholine, if you don't know what my project is, basically I'm trying to see, I should have said this in the beginning. I'm trying to see if high levels of acetylcholine, which is a chemical that usually helps us to learn or to just be alert in the world. I've found some studies that say that when we're really stressed out, that chemical gets released too much. And I'm basically thinking that because that chemical is released too much, usually when that chemical goes all the way down, it makes it so that the memories that we make during the day are able to go into our long-term memory. So are able to sort of be put together in a way that we can remember, understand, and use. But what I'm thinking is that if those levels of that chemical are too high throughout the day or throughout a certain memory, it's going to make it really hard for that to basically encode, and my model won't be able to remember it or to only remember bits and pieces. So that's my thinking. It's kind of cool because actually a rat can't really tell us that well. So it'd be a bit hard to even test this in a rat. So it's cool to do it in a computer system. But actually, now I am going to jump to the ChatGPT because I know what all of this is right now, but I wrote it fully out in ChatGPT. Okay, we had a lot of conversation over the last few days. So I was already thinking, like in my last video, I was basically talking about how I wanted to basically make a method where there was going to be different levels. So one of the trials was going to get memories that weren't really that arousing, but maybe with like one sort of arousing memory, like as if I went about my day, for example, and it was a pretty chill day. There was one exciting moment where I got like I got some gum on my shoe, but it wasn't really that deep, and then I went home, right? So then there's gonna be a second trial, and it's gonna be like a mix. So they're gonna have like mostly neutral. Then it's going to be a little bit of more medium arousal memory. So those are like the gum on the shoe. They're all going to be negative, which is why I'm saying gum on the shoe. And then like one little moment of like a high arousal memory. So one moment, like let's say instead I'm walking around, um, I like got gum on my shoe, and then all of a sudden like a bee stung me. And then like I went about my day. Okay, I don't know, something like that, something a little bit more traumatic, but mostly pretty normal. So if I still need to translate this fully into the rats, but basically, for example, in the rats, it might be that like they're these fake memories of these fake robot rats. Basically, they're walking around, nothing's crazy going on. They might have a moment where I don't know. I need to figure out what that media memory is going to be. Maybe they get handled a little bit by the handler of the rat, and it's a little bit stressful, but not too bad. And then all of a sudden, they get thrown into water for like a minute, and then they're out, and then like they go about their day, right? So it's like a little bit of like one stressor, and then it's like you're fine. This last group is going to get this is like my severe trauma group. Basically what's going to happen to them, they're most of their day is going to be stressful. So they're going about, they get picked up, they get handled, all of this stuff, then they're thrown into water for like I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they're struggling, they get out, something like that, and then that's their day. But they're like they have a high intense amount of stress. And what I'm basically asking ChatGPT to do, this is something new that I just came up with in the last few days, is that instead of just giving it to them like straight up, I'm going to have it basically I'm going to have like different nodes. And what's going to happen is that it's not going to be each of it like let me find what I wrote in my ChatGPT so I can explain it to you. I feel like I write better than I speak is like a big problem of mine. I'm a much better writer than speaker in every possible sense. Okay, so I want some kind of mechanism that creates maybe some variety, like a bit of randomness, but with a statistical tendency towards those options that I was talking about. The memories are then consolidated and recalled, and I use some fragmentation related scale to see if the narratives came up fragmented. So basically, not everybody is going to get the same thing, because even if I were to do this in normal rats, they wouldn't all get the same day. Like, or they might not all have the exact same reaction to the same day. It would be really hard. It's of course going to be like in a real study, everything would be kept pretty much the same, but it might be like a little touch different. So that's a big change that I made. And I actually made that change also thinking about the fact that basically I've been asking ChatGPT to help me, and I asked ChatGPT to speak to me like the most rigorous reviewer like ever, right? And it told me that something that was missing from my study was a touch of randomness. And so I do think that's going to be one good little element of randomness where it's not perfect. So yeah, as you can see, first group is going to have minimal emotional modulation. So just a boring day. Second group is going to have like a little bit of emotional activation. I might actually add a fourth group that just has only moderate. Let me write that down and see if that would be. I'm gonna just make a note of that, because I think that that's a little bit of a missing piece. Oh wait, no, these ones have a little bit of medium. I think it would be really hard for someone to have an all neutral day, but do I need that? Maybe. I might need that. So I'm gonna chat with ChatGPT probably in a bit. This has been such a cool like exercise in just learning science. I don't know, or like learning to make a good experiment. It's been really good. But yeah, I thought that was like a good little touch there. But this reviewer, who I'm grateful ChatGPT is finally being like a little bit more straight up with me, but basically this reviewer is still saying I need all these different things. Everything needs to be really set in stone about my definitions, etc. But yesterday he gave me hope, because these things I just came up with them and I was like, oh, okay, it's not that hard. I can do it. Like I did it. So yeah, I was just like, oh, what if I made it a little bit statistically different? And that was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And then I was saying, because it was also critiquing the idea that I was making it a narrative section, and I was already thinking that one. I was like, they're not going to have the same. It's not just that they won't have the same memories, but now they won't be able to tell me. It wouldn't be very realistic for them to tell me a narrative of their day. I only recently like decided, because of my reading that I did, that I can't do it like a human anymore. Like now it has to be a rat. So a rat can't really tell me a narrative. There's a lot of interesting studies, like the way that usually a lot of times people will study dissociative identity disorder is they'll have people read back their own trauma narratives. They'll have them write down trauma memories and then say them back. And that usually can be a good indicator of how people are reacting to their trauma and what's going on in their head. But what's really important to me, for example, isn't the actual idea that people can translate their story into language and speak it, but rather what's actually going on inside and what's actually getting encoded. So it was okay for me to drop that. It wasn't really important for me to have a narrative. I think that the idea that I had just ended up evolving and being incorporated with the same, almost, it was almost exactly the same, but it just wasn't called a narrative anymore. Now it's just going to be about what it can recall. So yeah, so I said for the narrative section, I won't call it narrative anymore, but something related to memory binding or recall. But I thought I'd make the memories things align with the rat studies I've read. So a day for a rat, I already told you guys this, where some end up having to swim or handled. And yeah, it did say that was the right move, which I was like, yeah. So basically, the anthropomorphic baggage, you don't want like a half human, half rat monstrosity of a neural network because that doesn't exist in real life. So it's not really right for me to have rat numbers but acting like a human, it doesn't really make sense. So, and I actually asked it what a study that I'm really interested in that was really guiding my how I built this. I asked it how did they test, like how did they my question was how did they test a place if their model couldn't move? Because they were looking at place cells, and place cells are basically used to tell you the time and the place that you were in, essentially. And these researchers made an actual neural network of exactly how that entire sequence operated. And it's the same thing that I'm looking at, but looking at it from a different perspective. But basically, they did tell me that they had to make like a virtual environment essentially, and they still had cells that fired in location specific ways. So that just showed me that I was on the right track essentially, because I'm just going to be making, I guess this is something for me to think about. I still need to think about like probably doing the same thing. I probably should still incorporate that time and place specific, but then I think the thing that's just going to be on top of that is just going to be the arousal um piece. I'm wondering, this is my question for myself for later. Does it matter that the neural network really knows like why it's getting aroused? I think like it's just going to be something, it's probably, I'm just making it up based off what I remember for ChatGPT. It's not going to look exactly like this, but it'll probably be something like this. Like, let's say they're swimming, it's probably going to be like pool plus swimming plus, I don't actually know how the time works. So I need to figure that out. This is definitely not accurate, but it's something like this. It's going to be something like I don't know, 1.7 acetylcholine. That's kind of what the memory stuff is gonna look like. It's not gonna be like it's gonna be that rather than I swam in the pool for 15 minutes and I was scared. Just to explain to people and to show you what the difference is. So it's pretty interesting. So that was a good thing for me to see, was like how did they do their own thing. So it did tell me everything that I need to do. I'm going to copy paste this so I don't lose this. Every time I look at this, I get stressed because I'm like, my God, I need to do so much work still, but it's fine. I still got a long way to go. What about when they recall it? Okay, I keep having thought processes and I'm like, sometimes I'll be like, is that relevant enough to the project or is that a different thing? But then it does keep being relevant to the project, like what I'm thinking. Actually, everything that I've thought with that frame of mind has actually now been incorporated. So, for example, I thought that about the memories being connected to different types of arousal and stuff like that. So, I had another question. What about when they recall it? In PTSD, some pieces may be fragmented and still cause high arousal. Can I integrate that somehow? One of my big thought processes was that what my hypothesis essentially is that even if like fragments are, I guess, a little bit encoded, for example, when someone with PTSD, just because you remember something doesn't mean that it's not causing intense amounts of stress. And because it's causing intense amounts of stress, your mind probably avoids it, or you might not be fully encoding it, right? And I was thinking that
because my thinking is that basically acetylcholine is something that's upping the amount of arousal, but it's not that I'm thinking that you're all the time having high arousal. For example, myself, there are moments in my day where I feel really calm, even though I usually feel pretty jittery or like not that great. But there are certain moments where I feel a little bit more stressed, or for example, if a memory comes up for me, that usually raises the stress levels for me, even though the thing isn't there. So I was thinking, if every time you start to approach a certain subject, the amount of that chemical is going up because you're approaching it as if you're really having that happen to you again, which is how PTSD works. Maybe that's also going to stop you from integrating things, right? And that's why I think people end up having PTSD for a long time. So basically, I was trying to see if I could incorporate that. And yeah, it did say, for some reason, I thought that I was like, what are you even talking about? But I didn't do that. I asked, can I put this in? I said, in PTSD, some pieces may be fragmented and still cause high arousal. Can I integrate that somehow? Like have them recall it twice or something and see how that impacts recall the second time around, right? So basically, after the memory is consolidated, so after it's the pieces go in, of course, I'm thinking that the memories are probably going to be a bit fragmented or a little bit sort of iffy. But then what I'm thinking is that maybe, for example, the memory would probably still cause you arousal. Just like in real life, if something causes you stress, it might still bring you stress for it to come up again. And you even see that in animals, that they still remember the places where they were afraid or the places where they had an issue, and they'll like avoid that or things like that. Stress really impacts animals as well, in maybe not the exact same way, but very similar ways to us. So what I wanted to know is, after it put that memory in, basically, what about the second time? The first time they remember it, okay, maybe it's fragmented. How about the second time around? If it's still causing them stress, how are they going to remember it the second time around? Will it be the same or will it be different? And it did actually say that that would make my model more realistic and clinically relevant. So basically, yeah, it told me I could have a first recall phase. So of course, there's going to be some memories that have that high arousal tag, which might disrupt the encoding, or certain pieces might be a little bit more encoded while some others are not. And then reconsolidation, basically, then it's going to come up again. I'm a little bit this I've been really nervous because it keeps coming up with things that it, like ChatGPT, what it does is that it keeps telling you things that maybe you should do. And maybe not all of them are relevant, but some of them, this is probably something I do need to do. But basically, it's going to reconsolidate, right? So the memory is going to come up. This is actually how it works. And, the memory comes up, we sort of reincorporate it, remember it through what we know now. Our memories are actually always being updated, right? So actually, that's why your memories change a little bit over time. They're never perfect or the same because we're always sort of updating our memories. And so basically, it's going to reconsolidate, and then it's going to try to remember it again, right? And basically, what it's telling me is that I should have those memories still be connected to a little bit of high acetylcholine. I don't know. I don't know. I need to read to see if I should introduce a small probability of further fragmentation. I need to see if that's necessary. Then it's going to test the recall again. So what did they remember the second time around? So actually, after I had that little piece, I was like, this is starting to look like a real science experiment now. Like, this is just seeming like more like something I would see in a scientific paper. It feels cleaner. One of the other themes of this entire project has been my hunt for like the cleanest possible project. Like, I want it to be really, really clean, right? Because I feel like I've said before, if your project feels clean, or if what you're doing feels clean, it feels elegant. I would say this is across the board in any possible thing that you could do. If it starts to feel clean, you know, I think you've got it, like it's pretty good. Like, it's probably going to run well, whatever it is you're doing. Like, it's probably well made, because you don't want a lot of little tags and extra pieces and little pieces that are just like, they don't really feel like they work well together, or it feels like it's not part of one process. So I've been always on the hunt for what is like the cleanest possible um experiment, what is the cleanest possible hypothesis, where it doesn't feel like, I don't feel scattered, I feel like it's all connected, right? So it did feel a lot cleaner now. I still need to do more reading and more work, but this has been like a really good I think this is already getting like really a lot more solid. This is cool. I need to fix it a bit, but this is good. And yeah, it's just really getting there, I feel like. And I've just been updating basically my literature review the last few days. But yeah,
I actually think I'm gonna leave it at that just because I really want to like focus. I've been really focused the last few days. Like I'll wake up. I yesterday I worked. I went to church, but I actually worked on this from like literally like I woke up and worked on it, and I worked on it until like midnight. Like I've been literally getting like a full day's work in on this project for like the last few days, and it's been really good. I'm not even realizing how much I'm working because I'm just like enjoying myself. Like I've really been enjoying the process, but yeah, I think that's why it's made quite a big of a shift the last few days, and I think it's starting to look like a real thing. And as I go along, I'm like, whoa, is this really happening? Like I'm actually gonna publish my own paper in this field that I'm not even a part of, sadly. But yeah, getting excited. So yes, that is all for now, and I'll save the next few bit of updates for the next video. As a side note, I'm actually going to finish up putting all of the text from the dissociation debate onto my document today. I finally finished that really long one about fantasy model versus trauma model, and I don't know, I feel like I'm coming to like a little bit of like I don't know, like I'm a little bit of a milestone with that, and just being like, okay, it's done. Like all of it is now just going to be my research. I don't have to focus on that part anymore, like for now, on my paper. And yeah, now it's all going to be just the science until it comes time to actually write my paper.